प्रजजन रंजन यशोधनंदन प्रजजन रंजन यमुना तीरा वनचारी यमुना तीरा वनचारी जय राधा माधवा कुंज विहारी जय राधा माधवा कुंज विहारी जय गोपीचन वल्लभा गिरिवरधारी जय गोपीचन वल्लभा गिरिवरधारी यशोदनंदन प्रजजन रंजन यशोदनंदन प्रजजन रंजन यमुना तीरा वनचारी यमुना तीरा वनचारी जय राधा माधवा मंज बिहारी हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे जय प्रभुपदा जय प्रभुपदा जय प्रभुपदा श्रील प्रभुपदा जय ओम विष्णुपाद परमहंस परमहंस सदा श्रीमती स्वयं विशेष भक्ति विदात स्वामी शिल प्रभुपाद की जय। इस्कॉन संस्थापक शिल प्रभुपाद की जय। जय ओम विष्णुपाद परमहंस परमहंस सदा श्रीमद इस्कॉन शिल भक्ति सिद्धांत सरस्वती गोस्वामी महाराज प्रभुपाद की जय। जय ओम विश्वास श्रील और किशोरदास पाद महाराज की जय। जय ओम विश्वास श्रील सच्चिदानंद भक्तिनाथ ठाकुरा की जय। जय ओम विष्णुपाद वैष्णव सर्वभौम श्री जगन्नाथ दास पाद महाराज की जय। जय श्री रूप सनातन भट्ट रघुनाथ श्री जीव गोपाल भट्टदास रघुनाथ गोस्वामी प्रभु की जय। नामाचार्य श्री हरदास ठाकुर की जय। प्रेम से कौशिक कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवसाद गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप गोपनाथ श्याम कुंड राधा कुंड गिरि गोवर्धन की जय। श्री मायापुर धाम की जय। श्री वृंदावन धाम की जय। गंगा माई की जय। यमुना माई की जय। पाक्षी देवी की जय। तुलसी देवी की जय। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय। श्री हरनाम संकीर्तन की जय। ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय। इस्कॉन पद्मन गुरुवंत के दो श्रीमद् भक्तिवंत की जय। गौरव प्रेमानंदे हरि हरि बोल। All glories to the Asam. All glories to the Asam. All glories to the Asam. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. All glories to Shri Prabhupada की जय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरये। नष्टप्रायेषु अपत्रेषु नित्यं भागवते सेवया भगवती उत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिः. Hare Krishna. Welcome you all to the Friday morning Srimad Bhagavatam class. Today we are discussing from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 20, Text 21. स अधिराजो रतिता रचिताञ्जलिर्हरिं विलोकितुं नाशकत् अश्रु लोचनः न किञ्चनोवाच शब्बष्पविक्लवो गुह्यामुम् अधात् अवस्थितः. स आदिराजो रचिताञ्जलिर्हरिं विलोकितुं नाशकत् अश्रुलोचनः न किञ्चनोवाच स बाष्पविक्लवो हृदोपगुह्यामुम् अधात् अवस्थितः. स आदिराजो रचिताञ्जलिर्हरिं विलोकितुं नाशकत् अश्रुलोचनः न किञ्चनोवाच स बाष्पविक्लवो हृदोपगुह्यामुम् अधात् अवस्थितः. Translation Srila Prabhupada ki jai. The original king, Maharaja Prithu, his eyes full of tears and his voice faltering and choked up, could neither see the Lord very distinctly nor speak to address the Lord in any way. He simply embraced the Lord within his heart and remained standing in that way with folded hands. Purport Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Just as Krishna is addressed as in the Brahma Samhita as Adi Purusha, the original personality, so King Prithu, being an empowered incarnation of the Lord, is referred to in this verse as Adi Rajaha, the original or ideal king. He was a great devotee and at the same time a great hero who conquered over all undesirable elements in his kingdom. He was so powerful that he was equal to fighting to Indra, the king of heaven. He gave protection to his citizens, keeping them engaged in pious activities and devotion to the Lord. He did not collect a single cent of taxes from the citizens without being able to give them protection from all calamities. The greatest calamity in life is to become godless and therefore sinful. If the state head or king allows the citizens to become sinful by indulging in illicit sex life, intoxication, meat eating, and gambling, then the king is responsible and he has to suffer the resultant sequence of reactions for the sinful lives of the citizens because he levies taxes on them unnecessarily. These are the principles for a ruling power, and because Maharaja Prithu observed all the principles for a ruling chief, he is referred to here as Adi Rajaha. Even a responsible king like Maharaja Prithu can become a pure devotee of the first order. We can distinctly see from King Prithu's behavior how to become ecstatic both externally and internally in pure devotional service. Just today, we have seen in the newspapers of Bombay that the government is going to repeal its prohibition laws. Ever since Gandhi's non cooperation movement, Bombay has been kept dry and has not allowed its citizens to drink. But unfortunately, the citizens are so clever that they have increased illicit distillation of liquor, and although not being sold publicly in shops, liquor is being sold in public laboratories and similar normal places. Unable to check such illicit smuggling, the government has decided to manufacture the liquor at cheaper prices so that people can have their supply of intoxication directly from the government instead of purchasing it in public laboratories. The government failed to change the hearts of the citizens from indulging in sinful life. So instead of losing the taxes they collect to inflate the treasury, they have decided to manufacture liquor to supply to the citizens who hanker after it. This kind of government cannot check the resultant actions of sinful life, namely war, pestilence, famine, earthquakes, and similar other disturbances. Nature's law is that as soon as there are discrepancies in regard to the law of God, which are described in Bhagavad Gita as dharmasya glanihi, or disobedience to the law of nature or God, at once there will be heavy punishment in the form of sudden outbreaks of war. We have recently experienced a war between India and Pakistan. Within 14 days, there have been immense losses of men and money, and there have been disturbances to the entire world. These are the reactions of sinful life. The Krishna conscious movement is meant to make people pure and perfect. If we become even partially pure, as described in the Bhagavatam, by development of Krishna consciousness, Nashtapraya with Shuabhitreshu, by development of Krishna consciousness, then lust and greed, the material disease of the citizens, will be reduced. This can be made possible simply by broadcasting the pure message of Srimad Bhagavatam or Krishna consciousness. Big commercial and industrial firms have contributed many thousands of rupees to a defense fund that burns the money in the form of gunpowder. But unfortunately, if they are asked to contribute liberally to advance the Krishna conscious movement, they are reluctant. Under the circumstances, the world will periodically suffer from such upsurges and outbreaks of war, which are the consequences of not being Krishna conscious. Omakyantimirādhasya. Jnanāñjana Salakaya. Chakshurmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale. Swayam Rupakata Mahyam Dadati Swapadadikam. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Vidapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamsha. Shri Rupam Sakarjatam Sagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Stivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parjara Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitamscha. हे कृष्ण करुणा सिंधु दीन बंधो जगतपते गोपीश गोपिका कांता राधा कांता नमोस्तुते तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुस्ते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिय पंचकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपासिन्धुभ्यश्च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। महं करोति वाचालं भंगं नन्वेदि गिरिमेत्कपातमहं वन्दे श्रीगुरुं परमानन्दमाधवं श्री चैतन्य ईश्वरम्। Hare Krishna. So here we see in today's sloka, Prithu Maharaj is addressing Krishna as Adi Raja. Adi Raja means just like Srila Prabhupada mentions, just as Krishna is mentioned in Brahma Samhita as Adi Purusha, Ishvara Parama Krishna, Sachidananda Vigraha, Anadira Adir Govinda, Sarva Karna Karanam. So similarly, King Prithu is advised here as Adi Raja, or the original and ideal king. So Prithu Maharaj was a great, not only an empowered incarnation, but also a great devotee of the Lord. So empowered incarnation means the Lord enters into a living entity for a particular jiva, for a particular mission. And Prithu Maharaj, one of the foremost of the mission was when he took over the kingdom was short of grains, and he milked the cow in various forms, and then the Mother Earth produced sufficient grains. So it is said in the Shastras that King Prithu was the original king who established this principle, because of which today we are getting the grains from Mother Earth. So he was a perfect example of a king. He was a great devotee of the Lord, and he was a leader in all respects. And he provided the citizens with all the basic necessities like grains, milk, etc. So kings used to have all these divine qualities, and there are examples in Srimad Bhagavatam, the first canto itself, as to how the forefathers of Maharaj Yudhishthira, they were all great kings, very pious, and they were glorified for their great achievements. And not only that, they were all great saints on the royal throne. So therefore, all the members of the state were very, very happy. They were very pious, well-behaved, prosperous, and spiritually enlightened. So this is a very important aspect, because when the king is spiritually enlightened, the citizens will also be spiritually enlightened. So Maharaj Yudhishthira was himself a replica of his ancestors, and he decided that the next king after him also become exactly like his great forefathers. That means Maharaj Yudhishthira wanted that his progeny also be great devotees of the Lord. And he was very happy to learn these things from the learned Brahmanas. And when Parikshit Maharaj was to be born, he consulted the Brahmanas, and they said that the child would be a first-class devotee of the Lord. And more confidently, he wanted to know whether the child was going to follow in the footsteps of his forefathers. That's what every parent wants. They want their children to be following the forefathers, particularly devotees of the Lord. So he also wanted that the king should be very pious, very chivalrous, and peer personified, should be afraid. So he must also leave his an apparent hair equal to those of the forefathers. This was the prayer that Maharaji Yudhishthira had. Then there is another example given in first canto itself, where it is said that when Parikshit Maharaj was born, uh, people were very happy. Why they were happy? Because he had a lot of good qualities. He was a very able administrator, and the happiness was of the citizens was measured because there was sufficient protection of natural producers such as grains, fruits, milk, herbs, valuable stones, minerals, and everything was there in sufficient quantity. So people had no miseries. There were no bodily miseries. There were no anxieties of mind, and there were no natural disturbances and or disturbances from other living beings. So why people are disturbed today? Because they have, of course, grains may be available in plenty, but in those, if you compare about 10, 20 years back, there was a lot of shortage of grains because this is how politics works. And we had to import a lot of grains, and there was ration and black marketing and all those things. Then, of course, Adideva, Devika, Adibhautika, and Adhyatmika, all these are disturbances that are created to the citizens. But when there is a king who is a able ruler, then there is no disturbance to the living entities, because the first thing is that everything is available in plenty. So everyone was happy in all respects, and there was no resentment at all. And therefore, it is said that people were very much enlightened spiritually, and there was no quarrel about it on any of the matters. That's how great Parikshit Maharaj was. So even before he was born, it was predicted that he will have a lot of good qualities, because the Pandavas were also great quality, had a lot of good qualities. So apparently Parikshit Maharaj also, it was forecast. The forecast was that he would have a lot of good qualities, and he had a lot of good qualities, being a great devotee of the Lord. And it's mentioned that the real qualification is to become a devotee of the Lord, and gradually then all the other things develop. So Parikshit Maharaj was a great Mahabhagavata, or a first-class devotee, who was not only well-versed in the science of devotion, but also able to convert others to become devotees by his transcendental instruction. This is more important for a king, because his first duty is to ensure that sufficient necessities are provided. And then the next thing is to ensure that citizens follow the path of self-realization, that is, they all become devotees of the Lord. So Parikshit Maharaj was a great devotee in that respect, and he consulted all the Brahmanas who were very, very capable to give him good advice. uh, then there is a mention in the fourth canto itself as to how Maharaj Prithu was so powerful that he could exhibit all the qualities of the predominating deities in other planets. That means there are so many planets in the earthly planet itself, and there are so many kings, and there were so many deities. So Prithu Maharaj had the qualities of all those deities of all the planets put together. That is how great Prithu Maharaj was. Then there is a mention in the fifth canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, where the residents of Jambudvipa, they pray and they glorify Lord Ramachandra. It goes like this: let me please your lordship by chanting the Bija mantra Omkara. I wish to offer my respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead, who is the best among the most elevated personalities. So they were residents glorified Lord Rama as the best of the most elevated personalities. Then they say, your lordship is the reservoir of all good qualities of Aryans, people who are advanced. Your character and behavior is always are always consistent, and you always control your senses and mind. So as Lord Ramachandra, he perfectly exhibited as to how his mind and senses were controlled. Then they further pray, saying that just like an ordinary human being acting, you exhibit exemplary character to teach others how to behave. So a king is one, yet, as Lord himself says in Bhagavad Gita, yet achara shreshtas. That means the Lord Rama exhibited an exemplary character by which he taught others how to behave. This is also an important point. Then they say that there is a touchstone that can be used to examine the quality of gold. That means the touchstone is something, by touching that any object becomes gold. So They are comparing Lord Rama to a touchstone that can verify all good qualities. That means Lord Rama had so much of good qualities by his association, people would develop good qualities. Then they lastly glorify, you are worshipped by Brahmanas, you are the foremost of all devotees. You, the Supreme Person, are the King of Kings, and therefore I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. So just as Prithu Maharaj was considered as the King of Kings, they glorified Lord Rama also as the King of Kings. This is an important quote. Then there is a quote in the sixth canto of Srimad Bhagavatam which says that a king or government official should be so well qualified that he acts as a father, a maintainer, and a protector of the citizens because of affection and love. That means a king should take care of his citizens as a father, as a maintainer and protector, out of affection and love, not out of dictatorship. Then it says that he should give the citizens good advice and instructions according to the standard scriptures and should be equal to everyone. That means when a king gives good advice to his citizens based on the scriptures, and he should consider everyone as equal, then the citizens also become devotees of the Lord. Then he further said that Yamaraj does this for he is the supreme master of justice, and so do those who follow in his footsteps. That means those who follow Yamaraj does this in fair justification, he gives advice, and similarly, those who follow in his footsteps also follow the right path. Then there is a mention in today's sloka about Prithu Maharaj who developed some ecstatic symptoms. It is mentioned as to how he wanted to see the Lord, but he could not see, though the Lord was right in front of him because he had so much of ecstasy that tears started coming out of his eyes and his voice started faltering. So there are some quotes in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu as to how uh, once voice falters when they develop that ecstasy of love of Godhead. Of course, we are not in that platform, but we'll try to understand because when one becomes a pure devotee of the Lord, he develops a lot of ecstatic symptoms, and there are so many symptoms that are mentioned in the nectar of devotion. And today's verse mentions about faltering voice and tears coming out of the eyes. So there is a quote in the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, 13th chapter, which says, when Brahma offered his prayers, he began to, Brahma actually stole the cows and calves belonging to Krishna. And then when he realized that there was a replica of the same, even though he stole them, he realized that this boy was none other than Krishna. So when he realized that, he started offering prayers to the Lord. And at that time, it is said that his voice was faltering because when he saw the Lord, he developed that ecstatic symptoms. At that stage, what happens is that we are not in a position to speak fluently. So that is why the voice keeps faltering. Similarly, there is a quote in the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, which mentions that the gopis, when they came to Krishna, wanting to have him in the Ras Leela, Krishna asked them to go back to their husbands and homes. So the gopis apparently became very, very angry on Krishna and they started talking to Krishna with faltering voices because they were all in that ecstatic level. Similarly, it is mentioned that how when Akrura, he was shown all the Vaikuntha planets by Krishna by the side of river Yamuna. This pastime happened by the river of Yamuna. So Akrura also understood that Krishna was the supreme personality of Godhead, and he bowed his head to Krishna as in Krishna's lotus feet, and then he began to offering prayers. At that time, his voice was faltering. These are some examples. Similarly, about tears coming from the eyes, there is a mention in Srimad Bhagavatam as to how Rukmini, when she was in Dwarka, uh, she was by the side of Krishna. And then at that time, she developed so much of ecstasy that tears started coming out of her eyes. And even though she did not like the tears to be coming, but automatically tears started coming. Similarly, Satyabhama began to shed tears because of out of our affection to Krishna. Uh, there is another contrasting example of shedding of tears that can also come out of anger. So sometimes tears can come out if somebody is in angry mode. This was exhibited by Bhima, when he saw that Shishupala was insulted. See, in the Rajasuya Yajna, that sacrificial thing, uh, Bhima saw that uh, Shishupala was insulting Krishna in every possible way. But Krishna did not order Shishupala to be killed. So at that time, Bhima was so angry that he got very angry that hot tears started coming from his eyes. And this is sometimes compared to the evening moon. Uh, when the moon is slightly covered by a thin cloud, it is said that it looks very, very nice. And so when Bhima was shedding tears on account of his anger, he also looked very, very beautiful. These are some ecstatic symptoms. Similarly, when Krishna and Rukmani were talking to each other, uh, at that time, Rukmini started feeling that she might be separated from the Lord. So she started scratching the earth with her red lotus like nails. At that time, she started shedding tears, and they put a black ointment around the eyes. It is said that those ointment were dripping along with her tears because Rukmini was so aggrieved that her voice was also choked up. So Prithu Maharaj developed these ecstatic symptoms and exhibited the same. So similarly, when the Lord himself was present in front of him, he could not see the Lord out of his ecstatic feelings, and he started embracing the Lord within his heart and remained standing there with folded hands. So the Lord was present in front of Prithu Maharaj, but he could not see the Lord there, but then he started embracing the Lord within the heart as everyone, the Lord is situated in everyone's heart as Paramatma. So he started embracing that form of the Lord. So it is mentioned that Prithu Maharaj was very, very ecstatic, both externally and internally in pure devotional service. Another good quality of Prithu Maharaj was that before his reign, there were a lot of rogues and thieves. And Prithu Maharaj was very, very expert in keeping them all under check. And because of being a great devotee of the Lord and being a great hero, he conquered all the undesirable elements in the kingdom. So he was so powerful that he was equal in fighting to Indra, the king of heaven. And not only that, he gave protection to his citizens, keeping them engaged in pious activities and also devotion to the Lord. So a king is not only supposed to protect the citizens physically, but also spiritually. That is a prime duty of a king to ensure that the citizens take up the spiritual path and they all become devotees of the Lord. And in that respect, Prithu Maharaj was very capable to make the citizens all devotees of the Lord. Not only that, it is mentioned that he did not collect a single cent of tax from the citizens without being able to give them protection from all calamities. So, it is the duty of a king that he cannot collect taxes unless and until he is able to give them physical protection as well as spiritual protection. So, we will look at some examples in the Bhagavatam itself where it is mentioned in the first canto itself uh, that the Brahmanas and Vipras, they all had a right to get subsidized, many things subsidized by the state government. So it is mentioned that the state executive head had the right to collect taxes and fines from the citizens, provided they get all these subsidies. It is mentioned that after the battle of Kurukshetra, the state was completely exhausted. There was no finance in the treasury, and there was no surplus fund also, and it was not sufficient enough. So Maharaj Yudhishthira was at that time anxious to get more wealth in some or other way to perform. So he wanted a horse sacrifice. And Yudhishthira Maharaj wanted to perform this sacrifice under the instruction of Bhishma Deva. So it is mentioned that unless and until the citizens are protected every way, including spiritual protection, the state cannot collect taxes. There is also a quote that the third canto, which mentions that the Brahmanas were given all the necessities of life by the Kshatriyas and the Vaishyas because they had no time to earn their living. So the Kshatriyas would collect the taxes from the Vaishyas and Shudras, and but the Brahmanas were exempt from paying taxes or any land revenue. That means the Kshatriyas, Vaishyas and Shudras had to pay tax, but the Brahmanas were not expected to pay tax because they had no sever source of income. And the Kshatriyas would collect this from Vaishyas and Shudras and give in charity to the Brahmana. This is how the system was working. Of course, now we can't say anything because the whole society has degraded. There is also a quote in the fourth canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam which says, "It is the duty of the king to look after the comforts of the citizens, even at the cost of his own personal convenience." That means a king should not look after his personal convenience, but he should look to the comforts of his citizens. And however, in Kali Yuga, this doesn't happen. So, when taxes are collected, it is mentioned that when the heads of state enjoy life at the cost of taxes exacted from the citizens, it is unfair taxation and it makes the people dishonest and people try to hide their income in so many ways, which we see today. Because citizens pay tax and they are not protected in every way, they are unhappy. So the people are dishonest and they try to hide their income. That is why we have the society which is having so much of black money in the system because they feel the government is not sufficient enough to protect them physically or spiritually also. Eventually, the state will not be able to collect taxes and consequently will not be able to meet its huge military and administrative expenses. Everything will collapse and there will be chaos and disturbance all over the state, which we see today in the process of preparing for war. The country is amassing so much of weapons and all these things, but how the money has to come? It has to come from the process of by collecting taxes. And tax cannot be collected unless and until the king provides protection to the citizens. So that is why there is always a scarcity of funds. And there is a mention as to how we'll come to the point at this end of this class. There is also a quote in sixth canto of Bhagavatam, which says, Srimad Bhagavatam, which says that although a Brahmana may sometimes accept charity, it is not for his personal maintenance, but for the worship of the deity. So even though a Brahmana may take charity, it is not for his personal maintenance, but he takes it for the worship of a deity. Thus, a Brahmana does not stock anything for his future use. That means the Brahmanas never had to stock anything at any point of time because they were all provided for their basic necessities. And it is mentioned that similarly, Kshatriyas may collect taxes from the citizens, but they must also protect the citizens, enforce rules and regulations, and maintain law and order. So this is a very important point that it is not only that the state has to collect taxes, but they have to ensure that citizens are given protection, they are maintained, given proper rules and regulations are maintained, and law order is also maintained. Unfortunately, in Kali Yuga, we see that the law and order is also in chaos and there are no rules and regulations observed even by the administrative authority. So, what to talk about the citizens? Uh, in the fourth canto, there is a mention of how an executive head should not be careless for the welfare of the general mass of people. And when he simply goes on collecting taxes, he cannot be careless. The king's real duty is to see that the citizens gradually become fully Krishna conscious. Krishna conscious means completely free from all sinful activities. And as soon as there is some complete eradication of sinful activities in the state, there will be no more war, pestilence, famine, or natural disturbances. That means when there is a lot of sinful activities committed by the citizens in the kingdom, the outcome of all this is that war, pestilence, famine, and natural disturbances. So many times we see landslides, drought, and all these things. And these happen when citizens commit sinful activities. And that is a duty of a king to ensure that the citizens don't commit sinful activities. And this was prevailing at the time of Maharaj Parikshit and also at the time of Yudhishthira Maharaj. So if a king or a head of the government is able to induce the citizens to become Krishna consciousness, then he has no right to live. Yeah. If a king or head is able to induce the citizens to become Krishna conscious, then he is worthy to rule over the mass of people. Otherwise, he has no right to levy taxes. That means if the citizens are made Krishna consciousness, then he can collect taxes. Otherwise, he cannot collect taxes at all. He has no right to collect taxes. Then it is mentioned that if the king looks after the spiritual interests of the citizens, he can levy taxes without difficulties. In this way, both the subjects and the king will be happy during this life and the next life also. Then the king will be able to share 1/6 of the pious activities of the citizens. That means if a king is collecting taxes and in return protecting the citizens physically and spiritually also, then the king gets 1/6 of the share of the pious activities committed by all the citizens in the state. That means the king has to give protection, then whatever citizens perform pious activities, he gets 1/6 of the result and he enjoys in this life and also in the next life. And if not, it is mentioned by otherwise by levying taxes on the sinful citizens, he will have to share the reactions of their sinful activities. That means if a king collects taxes, but he is not able to give the protection that is required, and citizens commit sinful activities, he has to share the reactions of all these citizens. And there is a quote by Srila Prabhupada as to how one leader uh, uh, was shot dead, and another leader, I'm not quoting the name because sensitivity, another leader, he said he became a dog in Switzerland or something like that. So these things happen to a king if if he does not ensure that citizens don't commit sinful activities. Uh, then there's a similar quote in the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, which says that the Acharyas compare the sun's evaporating the earth's wealth of water to a king's collecting taxes. So Krishna, when Srila Prabhupada mentions that clouds accumulate water from the land by the sunshine. Then they do this for 8 months. The sun evaporates all kinds of water from the surface of the globe. And this water is accumulated in the form of clouds and then distributed as water in the form of rain when there is a need. That means for 8 months, the cloud collects the water, and then in the 4 months of monsoon, they give rain. Similarly, a government exacts various taxes from the citizens, such as income tax, sales tax, etc., which the citizens are able to pay by their different material activities, agriculture, trade, etc. This taxation is compared to the sun's drawing from the water from the earth. Again, when there is again need for the water on the surface of the globe, the same sunshine converts water into clouds and distributes it in the form of rain all over the globe. Similarly, the taxes collected by the government must be distributed to the people again as educational work, public work, sanitation work, and so forth. This is very essential for a good government. The government should not simply exact taxes for useless squandering. The tax collection should be utilized for the public welfare of the states. So here Srila Prabhupada gives a very nice example. Just as cloud collects water for 8 months and then gives it in the form of rain for the remaining 4 months. Similarly, a government can collect taxes provided they give it back to the citizens in the form of giving education, public work, sanitation, and so forth. Otherwise, they cannot collect taxes. Then there is a mention as to the greatest calamity in life is to become godless and therefore sinful. If the state head or king allows the citizens to become sinful by indulging in illicit sex, intoxication, meat eating, and gambling, then the king is responsible and he has to suffer the resultant sequence of reactions for the sinful lives of the citizens because he levies taxes on them unnecessarily. So here also there is a mention that as to how when citizens commit sinful activities, Uh, uh, then when the king collects taxes, then he has to suffer reactions for the sinful activities. So Maharaj Prithu was very expert in all these things, so he had no problem in collecting taxes. And that is the reason he is mentioned as Adi Raja, or the original king. Then Srila Prabhupada mentions about how war happens and natural disturbances happen. So Srila Prabhupada gives an example how in Bombay there was a prohibition, and then there was black marketing of liquor. And then because sinful people started resorting to committing sinful activities in form of the four regulative principles, and the process, government thought that instead of citizens buying liquor in black marketing, why not we open factory to manufacture liquor? So they started manufacturing liquor in Bombay, and they started distributing to that. But because people started indulging all these things from that time onwards, the government had no other option but to open factories. And people also started to increase their sinful life. And we see that the government takes taxes, but at the same time, they manufacture liquor. So Srila Prabhupada mentions that how governments, citizens, the big industrial houses, they are prepared to give donation to the government for preparing themselves for war. But at the same time, when Srila Prabhupada approached many big industrialists, they were reluctant to give any amount of financial support for Krishna conscious movement. So Srila Prabhupada mentions that that is the reason there was a war between India and Pakistan, because of various reactions of sinful activities. And Srila Prabhupada further mentioned that the Krishna conscious movement is meant to make people pure and perfect. And if they become pure, then lust and greed, the material diseases that citizens have will automatically vanish. That means when people take up Krishna consciousness, all the lusty propensities, anarthas like lust, anger, greed, and all, they automatically become reduced. There is also a quote in the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam which says that the world suffers from outbreak of war, etc. And these are the consequences of not being Krishna conscious. There is also a quote in the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam which says that the material world is full of anxieties, and by encouraging animal slaughter, the whole atmosphere becomes polluted more and more by war, pestilence, famine, and many other unwanted calamities. That means whenever there are a lot of sinful activities being performed, the citizens become full of anxieties. And by encouraging animal slaughter, the atmosphere becomes more and more polluted and becomes great disturbance is created in the process by either war or famine or unwanted calamities. Similarly, there is a quote in the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam mentions as to how after the battle of Kurukshetra, Maharaj Yudhishthira was feeling very, very guilty. Of course, the battle was organized by Lord himself, but after the battle was over, Maharaj Yudhishthira was feeling very, very guilty, and he says in one of his prayers that I have killed many boys, brahmanas, well-wishers, friends, parents, preceptors, and brothers. Though I live millions of years, I will not be relieved from the hell that awaits me for all these things. This was the guilty feeling that Maharaj Yudhishthira had. He thought that just for taking the throne, he had to kill so many people, which is all forbidden. And Maharaj Yudhishthira was feeling very much aware of this, that he is going to suffer in hell for millions and billions of years. So this is how it is mentioned in the Shastra that feeling oneself guilty is a very big opportunity for one to overcome the impediments in devotional service. We all commit so many sinful activities, offenses, but we should feel guilty. Yes, I have committed this. That is a good help for our progress in devotional service. Otherwise, many times people don't feel guilty. They try to defend their attitude. That is wrong. That is a big impediment. Similarly, in the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, there is a mention that the whole world is compared to a forest fire caused by cohesion of bamboo bushes. So in forest, we see so many bamboos are there and they rub each other and automatically fire comes out. Similarly, this material world is full of wrath, and those who want to lord it over the material nature, it interacts and the fire of war takes place, exhausting the unwanted population. So whenever there is a war that takes place, it is due to the reactions of sinful activities. There is also a quote that enmity towards poor animals. So we see that innocent animals are slaughtered in the slaughterhouses, and the reaction of the poor animals is being forced on human society. Therefore, there is a result. The result is war between men and animals, or individually, or collectively, or nationally. So at the time of Maharaj Yudhishthira, there was one nation, and also people had sufficient abundance in availability. So they were all economically well-to-do, and there was no enmity between people to people or people to animals. And then thereafter, after the departs of the Pandavas, we see that there is a shortage of this thing. Animals were being used for slaughter left and right, and we see regularly war taking place. There's a quote also in Ishopanishad which says that one should accept only that what is required by them to keep their body and soul together. And one should not encroach upon the property of another person or a property of the Supreme Lord. So the Lord has facilitated by providing everyone based on their karma. But if an individual takes to usurping the property or of whatever is there of others, then there is always room for envy, greed, and all these things, material modes of the passion and ignorance building up. And such administrators live like animals for the sake of their own personal interests. So those who are in the hem of affairs, if they are lusty, angry, greedy, they are trying to survive for their own personal interest, which we see in today politics. The politicians see how to keep their position intact, for which they are prepared to commit any sinful activity, and they are prepared to let the citizens commit sinful activities. And what is the result? Srila Prabhupada mentions that the whole atmosphere becomes surcharged with anarchy and vicious elements, nepotism, bribery, cheating, aggression, and therefore famine, epidemic, war, and other disturbing features become prominent in human society, which we see today very regularly. Another reason Srila Prabhupada mentions is that he says that whenever there is a disobedience of the established rules enacted by the Lord, there is war between men and nations. That means the Lord has established rules and regulations, wherein the sixth canto it says, Dharmam tu Sakshat Bhagavat Pranidam. The Lord establishes rules and regulations for the citizens to obey. And when the citizens don't obey, there is always war between men and nations. And another reason that is given is in the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, which says that the asuras, they want to enjoy a life of sense gratification even at the cost of others' happiness. So in order to fulfill their ambitions, the asuras, uh, they try to equip themselves with all kinds of deadly weapons to bring about a war in peaceful society. So we see that all the nations and the leaders are accumulating weapons to be prepared for war, and then they have no ambition other than personal aggrandizement, and thus Mother Earth feels overburdened by such undue increase of military strength. So whatever military strength we try to gather, Mother Earth becomes overburdened and she can't take it. So ultimately, those who don't follow the principles of religion, they become unhappy and there is war. And there is a quote in the third canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam as to how uh, the Kauravas, the sons of Dhritarashtra, lost the war because of being sinful in disobeying the instructions of Lord Krishna. That means they disobeyed the instructions of Krishna, and that's how the Kauravas lost the battlefield. Whereas the Pandavas were strictly obedient, they followed the instructions of the Lord, and that is how they were successful. These are the various reasons why war can take place. And the most important is not becoming Krishna conscious. But if the nation takes up this process and the citizens strictly follow the Krishna conscious movement, then automatically lust, anger, greed, and envy, there is no room for such growth. Citizens are happy with whatever they have, and then there is no question of war. So with this, I conclude the class for the day. If anybody has got any questions, any comments, you can ask me. No questions and no comments. I think the class is closed. Thank you all very much.